2, 1.
Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of Tuesdays with I can't pronounce the. Don't make me say it. I think it's Maury, if I'm being honest.
Thursdays with Moire.
Days with
Thursdays.
Moray. Gilmore Girls disagrees with that pronunciation, but sorry, I'm rewatching it. Regardless, hey, how's everyone doing tonight? Welcome to a cool kind of episode. While this wasn't the normal kind of selection we do, I kind of tossed out a random suggestion one day, and Ian decided to go with it. So I'm very thankful to him. And yeah, now let me get into her all. I'm Darryl Ayles. You might recognize me from a few appearances on the podcast.
Woo!
I'm from London, and I just yeah, everybody's heard that spiel before. Um, but yeah, today I did want to kind of focus in and talk about some serious stuff that happened recently to me. My father passed away, but the nice things about family is, they're never really gone when you celebrate and relive a lot of things they love. And I think it was a really cool idea to just throw together, some of his favorite films. One I haven't ever really seen from start to finish because it's enormously long. Uh, One that is one of my all-time favorites, and another one that recently I've started to, grow accustomed to, and they're all period pieces from back in the day. So if you are interested, join us, and spoiler bound, but here we go with Bridge on the River Kwai, uh, then La Bamba? No, then American
Oh,
Graffiti, then La Bamba. I'm assuming
yeah.
You
if it's
got it.
chronological. There's the one. Okay, and yeah, now back to the boys.
Cool. I just want to say this is our 99th episode of this show, which is crazy to me.
Nine
Uh, this,
nine.
99th
we
episode.
and I will say
Wow.
this quick. Ian and I showed our faces more or less at London Comic Con this past weekend, where we actually talked to people in real life about our show, and it was an interesting experience. We had dozens of people pass us by on their way to the escalator, but they heard our voices for a minute, and we had a dedicated audience of two. So it was a good time. Yeah, and I just can't believe we're up this far with a show idea that kind of almost started as a joke or just a fun thing, but it became this whole little micro community that I'm really proud of that we've brought
Yeah.
together, and we're able to bring these voices in. Daryl has been on the show quite a few times, and Jamar has been on a few times, and both of these guys are great. I love what they do with Orange Hat Film Productions. Uh, Really kind of invigorating the passion that we have for filmmaking, because this was, I mean, the whole reason we started the show was to kind of keep each other sane during a very insane time, and that was the pandemic. So I'm glad that we're able to do this show and give back a little bit, kind of highlight these films and really talk about some meaningful stuff. Because I mean, we joke on this show a lot. That's just sort of how we keep each other sane. But we really like to connect on a deeper level through the lens of these movies. And yeah, I feel like I want to do more episodes like this where we really kind of connect on these things.
Hmm.
So I just wanted to give that whole spiel as we raise it last to Mr. Ailes.
Well, unfortunately, it's a tankard for me, so hopefully that'll do. Yeah, this is more than just a podcast for me, man. Like, for me, this is an opportunity for, like, creative artists to connect. And, it's very stressful to be an artist in this generation, so this is a place to just chill, hang out, talk about movies, and just get, warm and comfortable for a couple hours. And it's helped me a lot too, and hopefully it's helped you guys out as well. So, cheers. And of course, cheers to
Cheers for
late
that.
departed Mr. Ailes, and cheers to somebody finally making that joke. I've been waiting 99 episodes for somebody to make that Gilmore Girls joke because my mom watched the show and I was like, First Days of Moire. She's like, what? First Days of Moire? It's like, oh, reminds me from a bit from Gilmore Girls. I'm like, all right, let's see. And
Yeah,
99 episodes. Better
had to
late than
slide
never.
it in before 100.
Yeah, exactly.
99 episodes of Tuesdays with Maury on the wall. No, that's the
Thursdays slash Tuesdays
Thursdays.
slash Saturdays. Holy shit. Yeah, we've got a very special episode to the dearly departed. These were some of his favorite movies, and a couple of these I've been meaning to watch for years. Like, they've been on my radar for a while. My dad's bugged me to see American Graffiti, so I guess that movie's just everybody's dad's favorite movie. Much like The Good, the Mad, the Ugly in that sense. And of course, first up is The Bridge on the River Kwai, directed by David Lean, not to be mistaken with David Ground Beef. I'm not sorry. The 1957 epic film, because all of his movies are kind of like these epic, big period pieces, like very ambitious at the time, always done like complete. There's always like a big, like practical payoff, like really ambitious set. Like Lawrence of Arabia had the set piece on the train, Dr. Zhivago had like all of these shots like out in the ocean. In this movie, they actually like constructed the bridge very as similar as possible to the River Kwai, and then blew it up because it was the 50s and they didn't really take actor safety into consideration. But one half an hour way. Dave Lean's a very interesting, very pro British guy, and I always liked his crew members more than the actual director. Like I've only seen Lawrence of Arabia, but maybe it's because I watched a 4 hour cut of that movie, but it always kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. Like, yeah, like it looks gorgeous and it's incredible for the time, but the story just really wasn't resonating with me. I was kind of left that feeling of like, is this the film everybody's talking about? Like, what am I missing here? I just feel like something's missing, and I kind of get that vibe that people like what he accomplished and his ambitions more than like his actual story. So I was a little bit nervous going into this one in particular. Like, I was just like, I didn't want to be left with that same feeling. It's a story starring William Holden. Oh, that's two William Holden movies on the podcast, by the way. We previously talked about Sunset Boulevard. Now he's in this movie. Alec
Oh,
Guinness, who remind me,
well,
what
wasn't he also in Wild Bunch?
was he? I actually can't remember. Steven's gonna kill me for holding back. No, I don't think he was. I don't think he was. He was in a lot of like 60s and 50s like westerns and noir films, so I can see the mix-up. But I believe he isn't. Feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong.
Yes,
No,
he is. He's also in Wild Bunch.
is he really? Okay, well he must have had like a smaller part in that because I don't remember him in that movie. Also stars Alec Guinness, Jack Hawkins. Um, Thankfully, they didn't Asian face the actors, which I was so worried about them doing, being a 50s Hollywood movie, but I'm really glad they didn't.
Oh,
And
there was some kind of face though. We'll get to it.
oh, we'll get there, but thankfully it's not an Asian face, so I'll give them that much. Small steps, small steps. It's about the real true story of a platoon of soldiers being captured by the Japanese and forced to build a bridge on the River Kwai. Uh, Meanwhile, William Holden escapes on the skin of his teeth and eventually gets sent back on a Suicide Squad mission to take down the bridge. Meanwhile, Alec Guinness, who's the general of his little platoon, eventually gets persuaded into building the bridge, thinking that, soldiers and men built the bridge and not degenerates and, you know, like these outsiders that don't know what they're doing. It's going to be made by men, not slaves. So he kind of gets manipulated and kind of talks himself into making this bridge that eventually all literally comes crumbling down by the end of the movie. It's yeah, I liked it. I probably liked it more than Lawrence of Arabia, but I have the same problem where it feels like it's too. There's a perfect 2 hour cut of this movie, but there's like a whole 45 minutes that just really didn't need to be there, and I think the film could have been more with less. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think.
Mhm. Well, I feel
Uh,
like it's just like a different time period, and I think these things were really like this was a true story of what happened during World War II, and this was the 1950s, so it wasn't that long afterwards. So this probably felt very, culturally relevant. So I do feel like we have a disconnect, at least culturally, from the events of this film,
Maybe a
because
little
this
bit.
isn't like recent history for us, you know? So I do feel like that maybe there is that disconnect there, perhaps when going back and watching this. Like I was having a hard time kind of getting into it, but I was appreciating all the technical elements of the
Oh yeah.
filmmaking and the scale of it. Alec Guinness is an amazing actor, of course, and William Holden all doing a terrific job at this. But yeah, I enjoyed it still for the most part, although I didn't quite have that connection with it quite. So I am really curious, Daryl, what did you think of it, and how did you or yeah.
Well, I mean, here, let me just start off by saying a bit of my dad's connection to this, because this for me
Please
was
do.
always a film. Whereas with like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, he swayed me pretty early. That also asterisk. That would be the first film in this if you guys hadn't already covered it, because
Oh, we have.
by and large, his favorite was Good, Bad, and Ugly.
Oh
Whole
yeah.
trilogy. Loved that trilogy. But regardless, so with this film, he always tried to convince me and sway me to watch it, but it was so freaking long. I would always just look at the runtime and be like, I kind of wanted to do
Yeah.
something like with the rest of my day too. And also, older movies, like it took me a while to get into that, like really deeply. And for some reason, Bridge on the River Kwai, maybe it was just the long title, the stuffy British guy. Every time I saw it, like the jungle, it didn't sell to me quite that much. But it's all about your perspective, right? A big thing right from the get go. With
Mhm.
because I should mention, Jamar also watched it with me for the first time, and we were talking throughout the entire thing, and it was really interesting because right from the first few shots, I was like, "Oh, is this 70 millimeter? This is really crisp." Oh, I should well, not the very first couple shots, but once it's actually in the jungle, it's like so crystal clear. And I was like, "Wait, this is was this made in the 50s? This is
Yeah.
70 mil, isn't it?" And yeah, 3 minutes later, I found out. Yeah, of course, it's one. I didn't even realize it was the director of Lawrence of Arabia at first. It took me like halfway through the movie to
Mm.
put those two together. So to me, I was just seeing this like I don't even know how to put it. Like I was seeing like Tarantino's influence finally. Like
Yep.
the Hateful Eight, which I know you guys are all kind of differing opinions on. But for me, there's like a steadiness and a slowness to the Hateful Eight that kind of earns its longer runtime. And I really felt that like he was trying to do the pace of a film like this. Because to me, it always had me enthralled. Like I could not tell you where the plot was going next. Yes, the one thing my dad would always show me was the ending, because the ending was
It's so
an epic
iconic.
little
Yeah.
ending. So I
Oh
knew
yeah.
that was coming, but it actually kind of messed me up because the further I got into the movie, the more I was like, Alex Guinness isn't gonna want to blow up this bridge. Like, what is he the bad guy? How did this all play out? Like, there's such an interwoven plot of like, and again, it's based on a true story, but it's kind of more based on the interpersonal relationships of a bridge happening. Like the real Alec Guinness character like was trying to sabotage the bridge the whole time and like didn't really want to make it. So there's like little bits here and there that aren't right, but it's all about like the Sato and like that drama over the
Mm.
prisoner of war rules
Those
and
are the best
whatnot.
scenes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's actually really crazy. I mean,
Especially
I
for
mean,
its time. Like they like giving so shortly after World War II, like giving the Japanese villain like an understandable, to a degree, like an understandable motivation, trying to see things from his point of view. Like that's incredibly ambitious for the time.
and
Like
that's
that's I
exactly
don't
where I
know
was
how David
going.
Lean
Yeah.
didn't get shot, like trying to write this movie. Like what movie was it? Like Sallow style, like the director
Yeah.
getting
Wait, it's
assassinated
like
for that
you're
movie.
actually portraying the enemy as like three-dimensional human beings that
Yeah,
have understanding
Guy.
like that's
It was
crazy.
so refreshing
or
because like I
motivations.
sat
How
down
dare
with
you, sir?
Yeah, like
like when I sat down with Jamar, I even preface like, okay, so this movie's from the 50s and it's in a jungle. So we're probably gonna see some like really poor stereotypes. Like I'm sure the bad guys just like really,
no.
you know, Asian, can't understand. Like I just said brace for the worst. And the further we got in, the more I was like, I think Sato's my favorite character.
He's the best actor.
Like
Yeah.
he's so, and like besides in well, yeah, no, you know what, the rant about hating the British, like at first I was like, why would you say that if you wanted to be in like England and all that stuff before the war and got called over? Like it was, but then again, three dimensions. That's exactly it. You don't just have a character that's simple and like you see their perspective and like, oh man, there's something so refreshing about that, that like the
Mhm.
further the film went, the more we just kept being like, man, this is awesome. And actually our copy cut out at a crappy point and we had to, scavenge to get
Aw,
another one. And it was one
that
of those
sucks.
like,
Oh
yo,
yeah, that was my bad.
It's all good, but like it's one of those situations where we were so into it that like there was 10 minutes of us like fiending like we need this on the screen.
We need
This
this
needs
to
to
happen. Yeah,
continue. Like
where is it?
yeah, it was like right when they kind of
It's
left and are getting into like there's about an hour left, but it's like right when he's been forced to go back. I I kept saying like don't make him go back to Jakku, man. Everyone wants to go back to Jakku. And it's just like, man,
no,
once
no.
that
It's like
happens.
That's
No,
funny.
go on.
it's like the first VHS tape just ran out, and you have to grab the second one,
You
and
know,
it's not
it's the
rewound.
equivalent
It's like, oh
of
Right.
shit, you gotta
yeah.
rewind it.
It's the equivalent of like a film reel burning up at the movie theater and the audience just complaining and begging like the
Yeah.
filmmakers to keep playing the movie. Yeah,
Figure out a way.
I
Oh
love
yeah.
that camp
But
investment.
And
So
maybe that drove it because it was at a good point. It gave us like a kind of intermission
yeah, it's
in
a
the
good
film, so
cliffhanger.
like I never felt the pace just like really drag down on me. I was kind of like, okay, it's this part of the movie now, and the ending was so like I don't want to go too deep into it yet. I'll because I know Devin hasn't really gone full on for his thoughts yet, but like the ending was so very, and I know it was Tarantino inspired by this, but it was like it was sudden, it was
It's a
shocking. It's
slow
like
burn of
everything
tension.
comes to a
Yeah.
head. Yeah, yeah. And then realistic too. Like when he was running across, Jamar even said, like, what? Has he been shot like 8 times? What is this? And he had been. He falls down. He doesn't make and it's one of those times where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, they were being real with it. It was just like you run out there, you're done.
That's a little
So like
surprising. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I liked how refreshing it felt. Like I kind of was expecting more of a noir, typical, straightforward film that's just runs forever. But like at least this one wove a lot and had fun on the way and
Yeah.
like had the botanical gardens were refreshing and like kind of a cool little comment on the British monarchy. Like it was an interesting like mix of it all. Oh, and the religious allegory halfway through. I'll get into that later. Sorry.
oh
I'm
yeah.
all over the
I mean,
place.
you know, the first shot of the movie has like crosses at the end of the railroad, so you know that lives were lost in production of whatever's happening here before you even know what's going on. That you know, they're building these things at the cost of people's lives. Um, Although I always think about this in contrast to like a movie like Fitzcarraldo, who, you know, Werner Herzog went into the jungle and employed this whole Amazon village to move a ship over like you know, over a mound between like rivers or something, which he did not have permission for. He like falsified permits in order to do that. I don't think anything like that was happened here exactly, but um, I remember I was just reading this trivia fact that the elephants employed in helping to build the bridge would take breaks every 4 hours and just lie around in the water, whether the crew wanted them or not.
Fuck this shit
And
on
I
out.
Yeah,
found that really
even
funny.
they need to take a break. Let's just
Yeah.
like shows
Oh, of course.
how ambitious like the project is. Like again, they actually built the bridge, and you could see men like actually building the bridge. And apparently, like a lot of the actors made genuine progress. Like they actually had to like train the actors to do more poorly, like to like fuck up and everything like that because they're actually doing like too good of a job. Because I think like a lot of them were involved with construction or something along those lines. So they're probably like, oh no, you gotta build it like this and you gotta build it like that. They're like,
I
no,
like the
but for
fact
the
that they
movie you gotta
actually
build it
built
like
the
that.
bridge for real.
Yeah, it's crazy,
I like
like
the fact
very
that they actually
ambitious.
built and destroyed the bridge for real.
Yeah, it's
Which
just to
I'm
destroy
trying
it.
to think of
Yeah,
like
It was one of the
was
most
this like the most
expensive stunts ever done.
that
I
doesn't
think
surprise
the
me.
asterisk is it's 30 seconds of screen time for $250,000, which at the
Jeez,
time
for
I
the
don't want to know.
time, holy
Yeah,
shit,
wait, where you know what?
holy
We have the
shit.
internet. What's inflation?
Oh yeah, $250,000. Hang on, I'll get an inflation calendar. But there's a part you're forgetting. They also involved the train. So not only did they build the bridge, not only did they blow up the bridge, they also put a train on the bridge and then blew
Jesus.
that up as well. Like, imagine if they fucked up
And
that take.
They
Imagine if they
actually
pulled a
did,
trap. Wait,
but
what? Go on.
yeah, so
I need to know this.
in the funniest way possible. So it didn't blow up the first time, which is like, yeah, that's fine. But the speed the train was going,
Oh no!
there's no track on the other side
Oh
because they
no!
didn't expect it to.
oops.
So it just hit a hill and started rolling
Yeah, two hundred fifty
Uh,
thousand dollars. That's $2,560,402,000 in today's
for
money
30
for
seconds.
30 seconds.
Yep.
Oh
Jesus
my
Christ.
god, like that is crazy. And about the story, like I think like the parts with Alec Guinness and Saito were definitely like the highlights of the movie, and kind of like the struggle of like, should we even build this bridge? And if we do build this bridge, like how can we possibly justify like building a bridge for the enemy? And it's kind of like this interesting morality play of sorts. But I think where the film drags for me personally is like as soon as it, like, the first half of the movie flies by for me. Like, I was like, wow, like that's like an hour and a half just flown by. That's crazy. Like, maybe this film will like go by pretty nicely after all. It won't feel like 3 hours at all. But as soon as it hits like William Holden going to the beach, the it was just like, okay, this film feels like it's taking forever. Like, I didn't feel like I needed like 40 minutes of William Holden hanging out with a model on the beach and giving 20 minutes of like very obvious exposition. Like, it just really dragged down, and that side of the story just really wasn't winning me over at all. I'm
But
not
Ian,
saying
how,
William
how are
Holden.
you gonna get the teenagers to watch the movie? I mean, you have to have that sexual tension.
TNA, man.
Oh yeah,
TNA.
and they
Yeah.
even joke about that. Like, there's a scene where it's like, "Oh hey, you're 4 minutes late," and it was just like, "What, that one happened to have anything to do with the nurse, right?" Nice. I'm just like, what the fuck? Why did the sex joke come from?
Yeah, that whole bit with him on the beach
That
reminded
was
me
so
of
weird.
the James Bond movie we watched. I think it
Yeah.
was From Russia with
Yeah,
Love.
it goes full James
Any
Bond.
James Bond movie, man. Like that is a key
Yeah,
James
That
Bond
is
scene.
full James Bond.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
at first, I thought it was brilliant because I was like, okay, this is clearly fake. This is clearly not real because this would be stupid. But it turned out it was
I,
real. It's
I,
like, are you kidding me? He just
I
happened.
mean, we just
But
I mean, the last
model.
episode we did were some real mind-bender movies, which have a lot of, plot subversion. So it's just so surreal going back to just seeing like a normal kind of plot unfolding, and there isn't some subversion or some, oh, this was all a fake thing this whole time kind of thing. It's like, no, that's just literally what happened. They're just being very matter of fact about it.
Yeah, he somehow ended up on a beach, and on that beach light a rescue copter, and the rescue copter was right near a military hospital, and on the military hospital there's also a model. I'm just like, all right, like, this is officially a little too convenient.
I mean,
No, he floated out to sea and then was found by
But
like thing. So like it wasn't that convenient, but it wasn't well explained. That's the issue. Like both Jamar and I thought we were missing like
it
a
felt like
scene
footage was
before the
missing. Yeah.
first breakout, and then a scene like explaining how he was picked up, because it's just a throwaway line, and it's like. The confusion right here is exactly why we need something like that. Whereas, yeah, it does drag a little at that time, but it's really trying to like turn gears hard for a movie from the 50s. Like this, it's like introducing brand new characters and an entirely new subplot. Like, that bridge, we're gonna blow it up now. So it did kind of need like a little coddling for the audience, I'm sure,
I
to
guess.
change
Yeah, for the
gears.
time
But
especially.
but hey,
for anybody that's fell asleep in the movie theater halfway through.
yeah, there you go.
Hey, wake up!
It's
This
like,
beautiful
hey,
girl.
remember this?
Yeah.
Hey, remember that bridge at the beginning of the movie? We're gonna blow it up now.
Yeah, stay
And
awake,
it's gonna
kids.
cost however many millions of dollars.
I feel like the way to fix that is like have a scene of William Holden like out in the middle of the ocean, like out of water, out of
They
food.
Did.
But it was very brief though. Like, if you played that out a little bit longer, like Tarantino style, like, is he gonna make
you're not
it?
wrong,
Maybe
Like,
you need to pay attention to the movie you're watching and
But
take in
they
everything
did it,
that's going
but they
on.
No,
barely
he's
did
right.
that.
It is really quick because you
Yeah,
see the
it's super
waves and you're
quick.
like, "What's that? Is that a ship? Is that and like you're left with that feeling." And the next time you see him, he's on a beach.
He's
So
perfectly
it's
fine. Yeah, there's no
yeah,
tension
it's a
there.
weirdly jarring. Like, did he die? But that's the
Do you,
other thing. So this is a good
do you
time to
think that
bring up
was
that
just like
religious
a?
allegory.
Do
Sorry,
you think
Devin.
that was just like a pickup shot that they threw in there?
Yeah,
Sometimes I
it
wonder.
felt like that a little bit.
Like there was
yeah.
just chunks missing because they filmed out in the jungle.
yeah,
Or
and
they
they were
ran
like,
out
"We'll
of
get
money.
it some other
Yeah.
day."
Or they ran out of money because the
They shot
stunts
it
were
at
so
like
Yeah,
expensive.
it's just like it's not even the actor. It's just a stunt double that looks like him. And he's
It's the
silhouetted
director.
against the
Yeah.
sun, and
yeah,
it's
with
like
all that
they,
fake
like,
beard on the face. Yeah, it's a
or
stand-in.
it's like the day for night effect. It's like, oh, you can't tell that's not William Holden
Oh
or
man, you
whoever the
brought up the
actor
day
is.
for night. Oh geez. So not only this, but we'll get into it for American Graffiti for sure. But the day for night of period pieces is wild to me. I could not get
Oh
over
yeah,
it. It's
I
just
did think
so
this was
blatantly
one.
day. Like there's like bright ass clouds out, and you're trying to tell me
There's a
it's dark.
sun.
Fuck
Yeah.
you.
I didn't think it was that bad. Like, especially for the time, it wasn't too noticeable. It's only really noticeable when like the first rainstorm hit, and it's like, oh, there's a sun up there.
Yeah.
Like you can see it like just peeking from the
Oh yeah.
rooftop. But besides that, I think they did a decent job of hiding it. Like I didn't think it was
I
that bad.
I think my favorite example of poor day for night shot in a otherwise really good movie is Jaws, like the very beginning of that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
I agree.
I
sunsets,
think
the
it
way
just
they took the
passed.
spaces.
Like you're saying
Yeah.
though, it's like people thought that was night for a while on screen because it was like,
I
well,
thought it was
how are
just
you supposed to
sunrise.
light the night? You can't make things look dark. And then, nowadays
Oh yeah,
people are like,
like it's
oh, give me a digital
I mean,
sensor, I'll make it light.
oh yeah, like it's just a limitation, right? Like film stock just couldn't expose to low light levels, so you had to shoot in the daytime and darken it in camera.
Yeah,
Like,
nowadays, nope. Like it was
Yeah.
like every nighttime scene in that was shot day for night, which is just mind blowing. Like
Dude, have we
it's
got into that
uncanny.
yet? What that
Oh,
actually was? I posted it in the channel,
I
but
haven't seen
dang.
Nope yet, so give me yeah.
no,
Yeah,
no, this is no spoiler for the movie, but like real quick, like side thing. So it's not exactly day for night. They actually shot a second camera like on a stereo rig, like you would shoot 3D, but they set it up so it was capturing the same frame, and one camera was pure infrared. So they basically had an entire range of image, both like with color and with a clear night, and they combined both in post.
that's
I
insane.
won't. That's
Fascinating.
yeah,
That's
unreal,
interesting.
man. It's the craziest day for night ever. And like once you've seen that and then you go back and watch these movies, it's like, oh, how did that pass?
Oh,
But
I
hey,
know,
like you
but
said, for the time.
for the time, it wasn't that bad. And considering like how great it is on technical level, like the cinematography itself is gorgeous. It felt very Akira Kurosawa to me. Like I
Yeah,
definitely
the
tell like he
shots
was
of sun.
inspired. Yeah, like the shots of the
Yeah.
sun, the wide shots of like in like characters kind of moving in the background, and a lot of like there's a lot of like overhead shots of like settings and scenery. Like that's it felt very reminiscent of his style. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he was like hugely inspired by that. And that's probably why he has like such a tasteful representation of the villain in this. Probably because he has like a respect for Japanese culture and cinema. I think that kind of shows in his movies. Lawrence of Arabia felt very inspired by that too. Felt very Seven
Yeah.
Samurai.
Well, it's like it was different back then because it wasn't just like content or whatever the hell. Like you were actually trapped in a theater. Like I kind of brought it up to Jamar a few times. Like that whistling scene, like the way it's leveled, like that would have been such a cacophony in a theater. Like it would have just been the first whistling scene where they're all coming in and stomping. It
Right.
just, oh my god, man. Like I felt like there were points in this movie where they were just like really blowing your senses and like you're saying taking time, like it was like really using the art form in all the ways it could, like
Yeah.
bending it till it broke almost.
You know
Like
what's surprising? This movie didn't have an intermission. I'm kind of surprised it didn't have an intermission. Like it was probably long enough. You could probably like
yeah,
cut it at the hour and 20 mark. That was a big thing at the time, where like these epic, super long movies with like intermission periods. But I guess like maybe this was not
I think
quite released in that
if
zeitgeist.
it broke the 3 hour runtime, I think it definitely would have, and there might have been a longer cut that they were working on, but they figured they could trim it down to only an hour and 40 minutes, or 2 hours 40 minutes. I mean,
Oh, I was gonna say hour and 40 minutes. I think you watched the wrong
no,
cut.
no.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was the first version we watched. It just
yeah.
ends in the middle.
I think my problem just stems with the fact that I think William Holden is a great actor, but he is so miscast in this movie. Like I just did not give a shit about him or like his side of the story at all. Like I didn't care about like the other characters he was with during the Suicide Squad. I didn't care about him at all. I didn't care about his model girlfriend, who seemed completely unaffected by the fact that he was gonna like go back to this dangerous jungle that he barely escaped from. And even he's just like kind of annoyed. Like the scene where he's telling him to go back is like he's not really selling me on that he doesn't want to go. His words are saying he doesn't want to go back, but the actor's not really selling me on the emotions that he doesn't want to go back. It's just as soon as that side of the story kicked in, the film dragged. I'm just like, I just want to go back to like the test of morality, building the bridge. Like I don't want to see. It's funny you say, Devin, that it's like, oh, that's for the teenagers to make the film more exciting, but that's actually where the film got less exciting for me. I was maybe I'm. It's because I'm becoming an old man. I want to see more of building a bridge and less of blowing up one. It's just the old man me talking.
It's more about the journey than the
Yeah.
destination.
Yeah, and this coming from the guy that says he doesn't like needless sex scenes.
Well,
Which,
no, I mean, I still
Please
stand by
don't.
Understandable.
that. But if it serves a
Yeah.
purpose, I'm all for it. If it's just an actor getting naked, you know what? Sex sells. I'm all for it. But if you get 20 minutes of borderline porn, that's a different story. Enter the
Yep.
void. Anyways, do we have final ratings? I think I've said my piece about this movie. I love one half of the story, don't love the other half, but I admire the ambition, scope, and visual presentation of this project. Great music too. Didn't really
Yeah, the
touch on the
Royal
score too much.
Philharmonic. We didn't even
I feel
mention
like
that.
I need to. Uh,
Sing one like
well,
all the actors.
I know Daryl wanted to get into more of the religious allegory,
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
as you
Yeah,
had
go on.
mentioned, but yeah, I feel like this is something I really need to read more in the history of to really appreciate the full scope of the story. Because, when I'm just watching it as it is, just, okay, I'm watching a Hollywood movie about a historical thing that was mostly true, but I'm sure there's a lot of things that changed. I was reading a thing about how Alec Guinness was worried about playing this role because he seems like he'd be pretty dull and humorless, so he tried to inject more humor into it, which I find really funny. And David Lean was against the idea.
No.
But I do think I want to read more on like the history of the event to really appreciate the significance of it. But the movie does do a good job in the final half of really kind of making it exciting and really creating that life and death situation. And he has that moment of, oh God, what have I done? Toward the end, and he kind of destroys the bridge and dies at the same time, which I thought was really fun. Um, but also made for a pretty memorable scene how he just kind of collapses on the trigger.
Oh my gosh, just like that to me was why I kept saying it feels like Tarantino because it's so like I don't know, just like almost joking.
Ironic.
It's like
Yeah.
of course this would happen, the madness of it all. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It,
no, in
Felt like the end
terms
of
of like
Inglourious Bastards. Yeah.
there's
yeah,
there's
exactly, yeah.
there's good
Um
dramatic flair, but anyway, Daryl, this allegory.
yeah, it wasn't that like layered. It's just like how you were saying how the movie kind of breaks away. Like when he jumps from the cliff, I thought it was odd that he was in a T pose. But you like now that we're saying that, like it was like, oh yeah, it's
That
kind of
bugged me too.
him
Yeah.
on the cross shape kind of thing. And
Yeah.
once he comes out of the water, Jamar had this whole thing. At first I was like, oh, that seems very religious when it was a shot of just like the sun in the middle of the screen and he kind of stands up into it and his hair's all messed up and he's got the beard and it has like a literal halo that forms around him. And then like he walks, what's the whole thing, Jamara? He falls 3 times.
Yeah, so he's walking through the brambles and he trips and then he gets up and he's walking more and then he falls again and then he sees the village of people and then he falls the third time as Jesus does when he's carrying his cross. And then it's kind of like this whole like he's then seen as the savior of the film, like he's the chosen one, like he's the one that is chosen to go back, and like it's very poetic.
He's reborn to be a savior.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, exactly. And he ends up dying. Oh,
Poetic
not.
cinema.
Yeah,
Eat your heart
exactly.
out,
It-
Zack
Baptized in the
Snyder.
water, like you could make a bunch
baptized in the water. There you go. Yeah. And it's like I think it's just kind of, for the world was a lot more saturated with that kind of religious stuff back then. So it might not be necessarily like a different reading. It might have just been like, throw it in for them so people don't think we're just like completely communist or something. You know what I mean? Like just like I don't know. I can't read that deep
It's
into it.
it's preaching to the choir through visual
Yeah.
symbolism.
Yeah, exactly. And there might be something deeper, but I'm also not that versed in religion either. So what was my other point? Oh yeah, I guess I never really just shouted out how freaking beautiful this film is. Like the whole maybe that's just it. I'll sit there and watch 70 mil all day long.
Oh,
Oh, the colors, and it was just so well shot, period. Like so
oh yeah.
every
Off great
scene was like
close-ups. Yeah.
beautiful moves. We only
natural
got
light.
close-ups when it was needed. So much natural light. So much I don't know.
Mhm.
So much practical. Like them just jumping out of the plane is just like he's just strapped to the
Yeah.
outside of like the plane on the wing
Yeah,
and
they're
just
actually
filming.
parachuting.
Yeah. It's just so
They're
like
actually
I don't know.
parachuting. They're actually
I,
like,
I feel like they also had a
yeah.
lot of like they either used like some giant arc lamps or they had like some big mirrors outside to bounce the natural light around because they have that like hot light on the face. I've noticed in a lot of shots, which adds to the sense of it being really hot outside as well. But anytime I see that lighting, I always get uncomfortable because I know how fucking hot those lights
Ah,
are,
it's
or if
super
it's
Yeah.
even just
dangerous
a
too.
mirror bouncing off their face. Like when you see those like hot spots in their cheeks, they're sweating,
Yeah.
and it's really hot lighting that they use.
Oh,
But
you can just see them sweat throughout a longer take.
It's
Like that's when
very
you know
sweaty.
it's
Yeah, it's
like
very
they just
oh
progressively get
yeah,
more
sweaty
wet.
movie. Uptight has
oh
some
yeah.
competition for the sweatiest movie of all time.
Right.
But
Uh.
not to correct you, not to correct you on a technicality there, Daryl. But
Oh
I
yeah.
was just reading the IMDb facts. The negative format for the film is 35, so they shot 35 basically everything, but they did blow it up to 70 millimeter for the projection. So there's one detail there. It still looks great.
I
Um,
mean, I'd be
Negative
surprised if
looks
after
great.
the whole fucking. I mean, IMBD, they're sufficient with just listing one thing here or there. I would be surprised if it didn't
true.
shoot any
But
60.
that's
But
that
I feel you, the
that
negative 35 way.
that yeah, that's interesting. The
Either
negative in the
way,
printed
holds
format
up.
for it. But and then just one more fun fact I was reading. They originally the director originally wanted the soldiers to sing "Hitler's Only Got One Ball," which was a parody tune that a lot of soldiers sang during World War II. I guess it was a riff on Colonel Bogey March. Um, but
Whatever the whistle song is, yeah.
yeah, but Sam Spiegel told him it was too vulgar, and the whistling only version was used instead. But just imagine a version of them singing "Hitler's Only Got One Ball."
Yeah, especially in the way that trickled down in society too. Like that stuff was on The Simpsons, on friggin' all tons of little. Anytime there was army stuff in TV, they
Oh
always
yeah,
did
Oh,
the
and
whistle.
the orchestral score, like every
Oh,
time I talk
oh,
about an
so
old
iconic.
movie on this podcast, I realize how much Family Guy ripped off of older movies because that music was
oh
used in
yeah.
like several scenes in Family Guy. I'm just like,
Well,
okay,
imagine
yeah,
the
it's
creators of
ridiculous.
that show probably saw this on TV when they were kids and sat down with their
Uh,
dads watching it,
yeah,
and
Right?
that was like the one time they had to bond with them was watching movies like this.
well,
Hey,
Seth MacFarlane
rip
did the
off
same.
the greats.
Yeah,
Exactly.
rip off.
But
It was their idea
I,
first.
actually, that fact about like the opting for like a whistle only version of a song or an instrumental only version of a song reminds me of Doctor Strangelove. They have that like
Yep.
army tune, and there's like two different versions of it that you can sing. Where one is the original militaristic song, and the other one is like the parody of it that undercuts the meaning of it. And the fact they opt for an instrumental kind of leads into the ambiguity of the meaning of it in that movie. Like, is it a pro-war movie or an anti-war movie? I mean, it's pretty clear to us now, but in terms of the context of that scene, I like that they went for the the more ambiguous route where you can kind of read it either way.
Hmm. Yeah. Don't have much else to add for this one. It was a good movie. Maybe I'll watch it again in the future, but there's a great 2 hour cut of this movie that I could see myself attaching myself to more, but as it stands, giving Bridge on the River Kwai a 6.9 out of 10.
God damn it.
Let me guess your rating, Devin.
I'll give it a 7.
Ah, chicken.
You stole my rating.
Well, you can use my rating too. We can share.
Yeah, no, you spoiled it.
Oh,
I'm gonna give it a
I see
7.
how it is. All right. Darryl, what would you give this movie out of 10?
I mean, I've got to go with a solid 8. I enjoyed it so much more than what I thought I was going to. It was such a fun, like, I don't know, ride, and it was so freaking well shot that
Yeah, man.
yeah, no, it's
I mean,
definitely 8 for me.
for the whole bridge sequence alone, I mean, that's a
Oh yeah,
masterpiece of
you gotta
cinema right
watch it
there.
for like the ambition and scale alone, especially for the time.
Oh yeah,
No doubt about
incredible
it.
stuff.
I did enjoy it more than Lawrence of Arabia. I'll give it that. Fight me, nerds.
I mean, it makes me want to see Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh, I think you'd like it quite a bit. Like lots of people love that movie. It just, again, I love all of the technical aspects about it. I just do not care for the story or the pacing. But again, I also watched an extended 4 hour cut, so maybe that did sour my enjoyment a little bit.
Yeah, that's a lot, man.
But
4
like when I
hours
hear a
is
director's cut, the impression I get is that's the intent, the cut the director intended the whole time. And some people are like, "Oh, why do you consider the director's cut the true cut?" I'm like, "Because it's the director's cut. If it's not the director's cut, don't call it the director's cut. Like calling it an extended cut or something, or pull it alien free and just call it the assembly cut. Like, be
Oh,
honest about it."
Jesus. Yeah.
Jamar, do you have a rating for this movie?
Ooh.
I give it a 7.5 because I love the cinematography and I love the character building, and the plot is very interesting, but it's just not my to go any higher it would have to be a little bit more up my alley, and I don't see myself watching this like multiple times in a year.
Fair
But
enough.
I'm glad I saw it. It's a classic for sure.
Oh yeah. I definitely feel I need to see more classes like this and just appreciate them for the time period they came out.
It's
Mhm.
definitely the better version of Apocalypse Now.
Oh, hey, hey.
That's a hot take.
Oh
Interesting.
my.
Oh, not even, man. Apocalypse Now is the talk about poorly paced movies.
Hey. Okay. We need to talk about
We
Apocalypse
haven't
Now
reviewed that
sometimes.
yet, but I'm sure
Oh,
Steven will
boy.
have a bone to pick with you.
Oh,
on
Well,
I
the
have a
the
bone to pick with
redo,
him.
the redo or whatever is the one I'm referencing more.
Oh,
than
okay.
It's
the
like it's
Redux.
trying to be this movie, like with the whole like. Also,
Oh,
we
yeah.
never even talked about like the drag sequence where they're celebrating the
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
and it's just like,
I missed that. That was great.
what in the world was I just for a '50s
Just-
movie that was kind of
I thought it
wild.
was funny.
I mean, I think that's a thing that probably happened in with soldiers World War
100%,
II
yeah.
prisoner camp. I mean, it's just
I
guys
didn't
around.
expect it in this one. It's like we built the bridge. Okay, boys,
I
put
mean,
on a dress.
did you notice they had a miniature bridge built behind them?
Yes,
Yeah,
I did.
Who
so
took the
weird.
time to put that together? That's hysterical.
They
I mean,
did.
that to me felt very Hollywood, but I enjoyed it for
Oh,
still.
also one last thing since we teased at the beginning before we move on. They didn't have enough like British people for the big sequences, so a lot of the extras are like natives painted whiteface. So
Wow.
yeah, that was the face I was talking
In
about.
some
at the beginning.
fairness, I didn't
I-
notice that.
I didn't. We were just
Wow.
saying that too. We didn't notice it all. There was one character who walked in the background. I was like, was that guy blackface? But now that I know there were like 52, like 100, like whiteface people on screen, and I never saw. Like, damn, they got me cold.
They had me in the
Um,
first half. Not gonna lie.
Huh. I don't know how I feel about that. That's interesting.
right? It's
Yeah,
such
that's
a weird
wow.
feeling. It's like
Like, is it good? Is it
Good job here.
That's like the Uno reverse chart.
bad? We could do both
That shit's
sides too.
funny.
okay,
Wow.
that was it for me though. I'm glad I remembered that
Yeah.
before we moved on.
Speaking of
No,
both
good.
sides of one coin, George Lucas's American Graffiti. Devon
Oh,
said.
that's not where I thought you were going with that one. Oh my god. Jeez.
That's the best
Um,
unintentional joke I've made in this
Daryl,
podcast.
am I doing this one, or you didn't do? Or are you doing this one?
Graffiti?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll do graffiti.
go for it.
Cool. Okay, this one is like the especially special one for me. I remember the first time I was old enough to see this. I think I was like 13. Wait, when was 2001? I was only like 9. Oh wow. But the Fast and the Furious came out in 2001, I believe. And at the Mustang Drive-In in Guelph or Rockwood or whatever you want to call it, not the one in London, they did this special like night event where they had a car show basically, like from the time you come in until the time the movie plays, because everyone would show up early. It was like had to be there 2 hours earlier, you wouldn't get a spot. So in that time they had this sick car show where they had like all these like brand new like Japanese cars, and like on the other side they had just the oldest muscle cars, and did a double feature with American Graffiti. So that was like my first memory of it, and I wasn't into cars until a couple years ago. So for me it was like that was interesting, but I was a bit too young to get the whole like final night of school vibe. Like it was fine. But then I don't know, maybe it was about a year, maybe 2 years ago, but I think it was closer to a year ago. It was on Netflix, and it only came up as like there's only so many days left to watch, and I was like, I'm gonna watch this. I don't even know. Did you watch it with me the first time? You seemed like you did not remember any of the film when we rewatched
I
it.
remember.
Okay, but it was just a faint kind of memory. So yeah, I just like up and said like, yeah, let's watch this. And I wasn't even a car. Well, maybe I was just starting to get into cars, but like the movie itself is what enthralled me. Like, I was so taken by how I don't know, it gave me like super bad vibes. It gave me like the most, I don't know, like interesting look to the past, I guess. So I don't end up rambling, because I can just do that with this film. I'll kind of sum it up by saying, like, the perspective that this movie gives you is unlike what you would see from most perspectives of this place and time. It is a This period of the 50s is often like, or well, I guess it's early 60s, 61 or something. But it's often like heavily glamorized, and it's a culture you like to look back on and think like everyone was home by 8 o'clock, and like, 10 o'clock at the latest, and like you would go to maybe a sock hop and like all this stuff. And Greece was kind of like the baddest I ever saw people portrayed of that time. So to see this like really, like, not raunchy but really ground level take on this time period was enthralling for me. Like, again, I guess Superbad's the best vibes that I can get. Jamara brought that up, and I was like, yeah, it's like final night of school. Like, the influence is so real with that. Like, this wild journey, everybody gets separated, and they're all, you know, wild things happen, but it's part of that point in childhood, or like, teenagehood or whatever, where adolescence, thank you, where exploring and new things are so, I don't know, important to an extent, where I saw this movie in a completely different perspective. And I basically, right after it finished, called my dad up, and we had probably the longest, well, we had a long one about Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but probably the longest talk we ever had on like film, because it is, I don't know, his interpretations of the ending, and like just all the way cars represented people in the film. And like, I never had that deep of a talk with my dad. So for me, American Graffiti is like super special place. It'll probably be a pretty biased review in that regard. But it really is like, the entertaining part to me is like, it was so soon made after it's the period it's set in, and it's so true to the time beyond what we see a lot of,
Yeah,
these
like
look backs.
on the poster it says, "Where were you in '62?" I wasn't anywhere. I wasn't born yet. Um, hell, I don't think my dad was even born yet, actually. But I
My
remember
dad was
him.
4. Or wait,
Your
no,
dad was four.
six,
Wow.
six at that time, because he was
Oh yeah.
52. What am I even saying?
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe 9, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
But he was
math.
too young to really like. Even he was kind of not at that time yet.
Fair
Wow.
enough. Like, yeah, he was an infant at the time that these people were teenagers. My dad was not quite born yet. My mom was just born around this time. Um, but this is definitely part of that like zeitgeist. Like my dad had spoken spawningly of this film. Also of Porky's, of all things.
Oh yeah. My dad loved Porky's too, but I didn't think it would
The
suit the
highest
episode.
grossing Canadian film.
Oh yeah, the
Porky's.
highest grossing movie. Oh fuck. Um,
Hopefully that has
I mean, Richard
changed.
Dreyfuss is in this, and that's actually no. Who am I thinking of? Yeah, Richard Dreyfuss. He's a Canadian, isn't he?
Yeah,
Or
that's
no?
true.
But yeah, it's funny that his character ends up being a writer in Canada by the end. Spoiler alert.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
he is fleeing the war, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That hits a
I
little too
think they
close to
all
home.
I think they all talk about, or this is all like the last night that these teenagers were kids being kids before Vietnam happened. I guess that's kind of the subtext uh, at the end sort of infers, which I found really interesting. It adds this kind of morose tone to the end of everything. But I do love these kind of movies where it's a contained timeline. It's all in the course of one night, and it's following a bunch of different people's kind of stories, and they all kind of overlap. Just these, kids going out of the town, and they all have different ideas about what the future means to them and what they should be doing, or what's happening. Like Richard Dreyfuss is just trying to find this girl that he catches a glimpse of, but he just feels this instant instant infatuation with, and he goes as far as to meet Wolfman Jack, which people have told me I look like. And when they first told me that, I was like, who? But then I saw the movie. I'm like, okay, I get it. He was like a radio DJ
If you
for
styled your beard
many,
that way,
many.
man, yeah.
Oh, I would.
Oh, 100%. The hair.
Once I'm in my 40s, I
Next
definitely
Comic
would.
Con.
Yeah, come on, make it happen.
I'll see if people even recognize who I am. I'm sure the kids today have even less of an idea
Guy
who that
Fieri
is.
without his blonde. No, I don't know.
Stripes, stripes, and times.
Who else has that facial? Regardless, I'm off topic now. Sorry.
That's okay.
But no, it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, I found this so fascinating because this is like the one other film George Lucas is known for, other than Star Wars. I mean, he's done some other stuff for sure, but this is the closest thing to a quote unquote normal film he's ever made. Um, and I like how grounded it is. The way it was shot is very fascinating. Um, and I believe Walter Murch did the sound editing for this as well, and the editing, which had a really they did a really good job with. I love the way they introduce the film with just the sound of like the radio kind of going through stations, and you just get these little snippets of music, and you just get this raw kind of introduction to the world that this was all about the cars, this is about the radio, and about kids just being out in the town having a good time or trying to, and as they discover things. I just found that all very fascinating. Also, shout out to Haskell Wexler, who is a visual consultant. Um,
Which, if we want to believe the trivia, means he basically shot the film after the two guys he hired weren't good enough.
Oh yeah,
That's
Yeah.
and man, Haskell's been like really good for cinematography. He's worked with Terrence Malick. He's shot some films himself. I mean, he's kind of quietly one of my favorite cinematographers of this time period. Um,
Oh yeah, he's
I
one of the
just
legends for
He's
sure.
yeah, very
oh yeah,
talented. Did he shoot any of the Star Wars movies?
I don't believe so.
I'm kind of surprised by that. Kind of surprised George
I
wasn't like,
think he
hey,
worked more with Coppola, didn't he? Didn't he shoot like The Conformist?
ah,
Not
that's
Oh, he
right.
might have.
Conformist.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, very good
Um,
cinematographer. Also had to work with a really low budget. Maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe the other cinematographers were like, "All right, what's the budget for this?" And they gave him a number, and they're like, "No, like
yeah,
that's
no,
not good.
straight up.
That's not gonna work. We're gonna want."
It's funny because I've been credited as a creative consultant on some sets where I definitely gave a little more advice than probably than was asked, but it ended up helping things.
Well, I mean, it shows though. Like, there's scenes. I think what really happened was they got to the first day for night scene where they're in the bushes. Because as Devin was kind of alluding to, they kind of shot the script in order. I guess Lucas wanted to like uh have the wear of the night kind of show on them as the production wore on.
That worked for
Um,
sure.
but like, I don't know, man. I kind of lost my train of thought there.
That's all right.
Sorry.
You didn't like the day for
Um,
night.
yeah. So he didn't. I think after that scene where you like cannot see their faces in the bushes, like it is so pushing usable, and yeah, it sounded like they were pretty much replaced after that. And then you look at some other scenes in the movie that are so gorgeous, like the whole scene where Ron Howard's sitting with his girlfriend, and like it's
Ron
I guess when he
Howard.
says they want to break up,
That's who that
or
is. Holy shit. Sorry, go on.
no, but just like the lighting in that scene is like the epitome of perfectly balanced and perfectly on the
Yeah,
edge of
it's rough around
darkness,
the
and like
edges for sure.
yeah,
But I thought that was just due to its budget. But now that you mentioned
It
like
felt
multiple
very
cinematographers,
naturalistic.
yeah,
The,
that too.
like the lighting did not seem obvious here to me at all, and that's what I liked about it. It didn't look like, oh, they just literally have a hot fucking lamp on
Right next to
camera
them. Yeah.
just shining
yeah.
on their faces.
Oh,
Like it
like the
looks great.
driving shots, you know what I
It
mean?
looks
Like they
Oh,
so
had
those
to
look
have a
so good.
huge fucking light strapped to the car with
yeah.
them. There's
It,
no way they could have exposed that.
yeah, yeah, but they make it look so naturalistic. They just
Yeah.
perfectly balance it, which is awesome. And I even forgive the several shots that they're just completely out of focus because it's lit so well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and here's the thing, like you mentioned the driving scenes. It's amazing that a '70s movie with a low budget about people hanging out has much better driving cinematography than something like Taken. Like it's really far ahead of its time in that sense, and parts of it aren't shot that well. But I can't even be mad about it because it's like it's very ambitious. They clearly shot when it was really dark out, and they had like this crazy low budget. And they're like, yeah, you know what? Let's hang out and make a movie in like a day, like a few days. Like it's I always love that kind of like approach to filmmaking where it's like I just have this passion project and I gotta get it out there as soon as I can. I gotta make it happen. It's all gonna happen now. Like I'm all for a project taking its time, but there's something about like those chasing the lightning passion projects that always like really excites me. And with American Graffiti, that definitely works because I had a blast with this movie. It's a little too long. It has that problem of that a lot of these stories have, where some stories are way more interesting than others, but I really enjoyed it overall, and it really came together in the end. Like it's very melancholic and kind of depressing. It captures that vibe of like saying goodbye to your best friends really well. Like if you ever had that night where it's like you only saw like a longtime friend for a day and you just never saw them again, like this movie is gonna hit hard. Like it really captures that like melancholic feeling really well. And I've had like friends in the past that I've met in camps and other group events where it's like I hanged out with them for literally a day, but they were like some of the best friends I've ever had, but I just lost touch with them. And I
And
just
it's
kind of like have to look back in the moment, and it's a simultaneous feeling of like hating to look back and loving to look back.
Man, and it's so weird that you bring that up because I had this like at work today. I was just kind of trying to think about like the larger connection of these films beside like really sudden endings because they're that's not really that deep. But I kind of like stumbled upon this idea about like the like incredible feeling of now and like the importance that like this moment is passing and like it's the the unisonus of it all and like I think this movie really captures it well with the different stages of people because I George Lucas has said like a bunch of the characters are reflections of like pieces of him, like the dork he was when he entered freshman, the gearhead he was when he got into cars, the writer he became when he went to college, and like you can almost see like a stepping stone that this night is kind of like a microcosm for like youth in that like you see the nerd finally get his first girl or step forward and then you see like the not I guess you'd call him a jock, Ron Howard, whatever, the popular kid, and his girlfriend is like the second stage of that. So once you've finally gotten a girl, you've gotten a car, then you get this go steady for a while, and then there's the stage beyond that, which is the guy who's like on the verge of like maybe getting into a car gang or whatever you call them, or like going off to college and pursuing like these two options and like while he picks the one you see what the other one is in John who's staying there and like he's becoming aged out the same way as his car is and like he's just on the fringes of like being too old and like shows his resentment to the other like it's not crazy resentment but like the subtle resentment that like yeah you guys
Mm-hmm.
go to your kids sock hop and you guys do these things because like he's being passed and so you have like all of them having their own stories that reflect upon like from like freshman to beyond graduate in this one film all overlapping and like to me that's what really took it to the next level on a rewatch let alone the whole like does the fucking blonde exist like
Yeah. And
my like
That was a really
sorry
I
funny
like how
story.
they
Yeah.
they don't neatly fit into those stereotypes that like the one nerdy kid is pretty nerdy, but other than that, like the other characters don't exactly fit into the jock or pleb stereotypes, whatever the ones that are usually attributed to people in this time period, right?
Right.
Like
For sure.
I like that they're a little more subtle and realistic, more or less,
Mm-hmm.
and
yeah
I enjoyed that. Like it's refreshing for especially films at this time period. Um, and I was just thinking about the title, what they mean by graffiti, American graffiti, because I don't remember them actually doing physical graffiti at any
Well,
dude I
point.
have no idea what the title means one of the
I have an
suggestions to
idea
change it was
of the
one night
title.
in Modesto and I'm like that's such a better title for this movie
Well, I
than
think
American
American
Graffiti.
Graffiti, the way I see it is that this is like the writing on the wall. Like this is how we kind of express ourselves just with one night of fun, like exploring this like Americana and like putting ourselves out there and kind of regain our confidence. Like that, I think it's kind of like a metaphorical title. I really hate to sound pretentious, but also,
No, no, I
there,
think
yeah,
you're bang on with that. Like I was
great.
Fair
about to
enough,
say
yeah.
something in that vein, but you pretty well said it. Like
Uh,
yeah, I think it's about this just this impression of we were here. This was us. This is
mm-hmm.
how it
They're
was.
leaving something
You know,
behind.
for this period of time. And I do think that there is such a value to graffiti. Like it's considered the most degenerate type of artwork, but I do feel like it's the most like raw impression of like an expression perhaps of what people's lives were. Like if
So
you look
a
to like ancient
metaphorical
Roman
graffiti,
ruins,
yeah.
yeah, it's like metaphorical graffiti. It's
Okay, no, I feel that.
in this case, which I like. Um, although sometimes because graffiti is the only evidence of things. I remember being so amused when I heard that there was graffiti found in ancient Roman ruins, basically calling Julius Caesar a dick, or having these other like really
Subtle, yeah.
like crude jokes, which You know, when you learn about these things in history, you think about, oh, people were different then; they were more proper or whatever. No, but no, people were always as nasty back then as they are now,
See,
and it's so
yeah,
refreshing to connect to that, right?
100%. I think that was the thing that really took me about this film is it doesn't hide that. It exposes it if anything. You know what I mean? Like
Oh yeah.
it I don't know. There's just elements, like the way they like yell at like when Harrison Ford finally catches up with John
Oh
and they're
yeah.
just cruising down the strip like just hurling insults at each other. It's like the exact same shit that like I grew up with in high school, just ripping on like, admirable foes. And like I don't know, there's something so grounded like you're saying to this film that I just did not expect going in the first time that just really grabs me. And like down to the soundtrack, he didn't want to
Oh,
do
the
a
music.
score for the film, and this was one of the first films to ever
Jukebox
just
musical.
yeah,
Oh
exactly, that
yeah.
could be
And
completely that. Yeah.
and George Lucas, he originally wanted like 40 songs throughout the whole thing, which definitely would have eaten into the budget considering like what royalty prices are. And back then royalty prices were
Generous.
probably a little more reasonable than they are now.
I don't know about that, man. Music was like in
Oh
demand. You
no.
could really kind of
That's
like
this is true. This
you're
is
talking
true.
about the Elvis stuff too, I'm assuming, right?
Well, I'm
Yeah.
also
Like,
talking about
yeah,
the
yeah.
fact that like Christopher Nolan had to pay like a couple $1 million to use "Happy Birthday" in Batman Begins. Like, I don't know if it's particularly that generous, and I kind of
Well,
want,
that's an extreme for sure, but I'm talking about like accumulating this amount of songs. Like, I don't feel like anyone was going to be nice to you because you were doing a lot
oh,
of them. I think
especially if you're
at
this
the
up and
time it
coming
was
director.
cutthroat.
Like, we all know who the fuck you are. Like, why would we like hand over like all these classic songs to you? And I think
Yeah.
that's why he uses like a lot of like snippets of songs. Like, we're just gonna play
Hmm.
just enough to, so we don't get like copyright strike to have to pay for copyright fees, and then we're gonna move on.
Sure.
No, it
But
would have been by the minute, man. It would have been cheaper to do 15 or 30 than to use a whole minute 30. Like
oh
it's
yeah.
they charged by the second back then. Sorry, Devin.
Yeah,
Didn't mean to cut you off.
they had to be selective with it,
Okay.
and they would have charged by the second. And I was just reading more into that fact that it was Francis Ford Coppola that helped him fund the movie, because he just was successful in making The Godfather like the year before, so
Jeez,
he helped him pay for the music.
that
Yeah,
would
it
have
was the
covered it.
final push.
Yeah.
Because and but
Oh
you
yeah.
have brought up a couple times. We should kind of point out the budget of this movie. So it was made for like 3/4 of a million. I'm pretty sure
Wow.
Damn.
seven
I
something
mean,
like
you
that.
adjust for inflation,
seven hundred
that's only
thousand
like a couple million in today's
exactly.
money. That's really not
But
that
the
much.
amount it made back. This was like the Blair Witch of its
Oh
time.
yeah,
Like
like
there
it
is
made
no
Yeah.
so
return like
much
this
money.
And
movie got back.
He
it
made
was
Star Wars
because
because of
it
this
was
movie.
exactly it was this movie that funded Star Wars, right? And that was what I think George Lucas's real ambitious project was. That's what he really wanted to do, and this was more like
A gateway.
I can't remember the
Well,
story, but
the
it was
famous
like
quote is
he,
that he said, "Oh wait, no, go on, go on."
yeah, like he wanted to, fund that film, but they weren't willing to give him the money for it. So this was something that he, can you prove to us that you can just make like a movie that's moderately successful? And he managed to do just that. And so this was like the perfect kind of bridge project for him to get to Star Wars, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
I just wanted to mention
Cartoon.
real quick, Daryl, how do you think Tad would feel if I said he reminded me a lot of Richard Dreyfuss in this movie? Like, it's just the fact that like he's a nerd, but he also kind of has like the confidence you wouldn't exactly expect from that character. At first, it's kind of laughable, but after a while, it's like, you know what? Like, it's kind of admirable. Like,
It's
I kind of,
endearing.
yeah, it's very endearing and charming. It's very endearing and charming movie. Like, it's just very nice movie. Like, it makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. And I was gonna compare this to Dazed and Confused, which was kind of hyped up as like the most accurate movie about childhood. But watching it, I'm like, it feels very sanitized. Like, it feels like a very nostalgic view on childhood. And this movie has elements of that, but I was nowhere near as upset with this movie doing that. Like, it, I feel
Ladybug.
like it doesn't take itself as seriously, and I think because of that, it works a lot better. It's more about like capturing a vibe than capturing like what childhood was really like. And maybe it's just because of how the two different films were hyped up, but I think I'm gonna probably get killed for saying this. This is the better Dazed and Confused movie.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I would fully back you on that, man.
Yeah, it
And
even feels more realistic despite like what I just said, which is hilarious because Dazed and Confused has like smoking weed and making out with like hot naked chicks and like drenching people, and despite that it feels more exaggerated and rose tinted than this movie does.
well, I
Despite the
mean,
fact
like
it's more held
I
back.
even got pantsed in school, and pantsing is like, and mooning was like the crazy stuff in this. You know what I mean? So it
Yeah.
was relatable in that way. It's like I never saw people get drenched. I never, when I got high, there
I
weren't
didn't
just
get
naked
spanked with a
ladies and
bat.
stuff. You
Like,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
I
So
didn't get spanked with a bat. My mom didn't pull out a gun. So, hey, it's because I'm not American, but I didn't
right.
connect that film as much as I did with this one. And
No, that's good to hear, man. It's
yeah,
good to hear.
and we were mentioning Tarantino with Bridge on the River Kwai. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood owes so much to this movie.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
holy crap! Like the way it's paced, the way it's basically kind of like a day in the life, seemingly uneventful hangout movie with these like crazy weird characters, and some stories are like more crazy than others. Just the overall pacing and structure and how it all comes together, and the long scenes of driving felt very Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like they just drive for long
California
periods of
cruising, man.
time and play like old music over the radio. Not much would really happen per se beyond just driving to the music. I remember
That
watching that movie. I was like, you know what? I like this vibe. I wish more movies had this vibe. I watched this. I'm like, oh, well, I'm glad that vibe was reached again.
That's kind of the great thing about that time period, though. Like, I don't know if that was a specific thing where they would just shut down the streets for people to cruise. Like Jamara kept bringing up, it's like every single street is just a one way. Like, it was just like follow the flow of traffic and go in circles. But like, you got to remember, like, without internet, and I know it's a fucking easy thing to say, especially about all these three period pieces, but like, this is the one where like you see the lack of internet. Like, that is the social life. You are literally yelling out your car window instead of posting on or whatever,
Yeah, like
you know,
people are
like
coming up
Oh
to you
it's
in
yeah.
roller skates instead of like calling you over like a drive-through window. It's like even that simple act of like you walk up to get your meal, and like somebody has to like physically like roller skate up to your car. Like maybe it's just the nostalgia talking, but it is like kind of like nice and refreshing, and maybe like rose tinted, but not as like it, I don't know how to put it. Not as insultingly so, I guess. Like it doesn't feel like it's holding the film
but
back at
that and
all.
it definitely knows like how of the moment it is though, right? Because it was
Absolutely.
that 10 years past and George Lucas was like, you know, he didn't even want to film it in the place it's based in because he was like, oh well, it's changed too much in this period of time, right? So I think there's this air of like, you know, the good is always leaving, and it, whereas a lot of movies try and say like, no man, we're in the good right now because we have an hour and a half of screen time to fill. Like, this movie just has an awareness of its finality that I think adds to that moment and
Makes it a
to
lot
that
sadder.
vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's, well, it's lacrimose, right? Like, it's this happy kind of sad, like, I don't know. But yeah, it's fucking, I think it's pretty powerful for what it is. Whereas it could just be a silly little cruising movie. I
It's
think it's
got a
Yeah.
got
lot
some
more heart
deeper
to it.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For all the coming of age movies, I feel like this one has had to stay, culturally speaking, for a good reason, because it actually it grounds it in such a way that doesn't feel contrived, you know, like so many other films that do this type of era, like they're fun, but it's like, yeah, that's not what high school is like. It wasn't even remotely close to that. But this, even though this is way before our time, feels more authentic, and I'm able to connect to it on a more grounded level because it feels more like a real experience rather than, you know, what Hollywood has turned these movies into, right?
Yeah, yeah, this is the original one they made the mold from in that regard.
Basically.
Um kept pouring into. I will say though, it's so quality. I know you brought this up earlier that it's the only non-sci-fi movie that George Lucas ever made, but it makes me wish he made more
A
films that
hundred
weren't
percent.
sci-fi.
Yeah,
Like,
I
I
wish
just,
he went back to making these kind of movies instead of making two shitty prequels and selling a great franchise to the devil.
well, that's what in my mind, why didn't he make one of these when he sold? I was kind of hoping that like that was the whole thing with him selling to Disney, is that he would just start carving a new path as George Lucas.
Yeah, I
Hell,
know.
maybe he is under a synonym and
I,
nobody's
I
buying it and he's like,
I
well,
think
there
he
you go.
made some. I think he made some kids movie, and it was like being marketed
Oh,
as from the mind
Strange
of George
Magic.
Lucas, something like that.
That
Yeah,
was
and it didn't look
bad.
interesting.
That was pretty bad.
No, but like go to some period piece, like I don't know, make. I just feel like with
Make a
how good
movie.
this
Yeah.
was,
Make a real movie again.
yeah,
And
and
I think part of it is just like he's maybe just become a little too obsessed with the money and the household name. It's like I made a name for myself, whatever. Like I don't need to do anything else, and that's all well and good. But like I feel like I have a respect for directors that are like I'm gonna make films until I'm 80. Like even if they lose touch over the years, just that dedication to what like made them special in the first place, just that dedication to like continuing to expand their art form is really admirable, and it is kind of disappointing that good old George Lucas hasn't dabbled in that at least a little bit. Like if he made like a live action movie now, even if it was bad, even if it didn't look good, I'd still probably watch it because it's like, all right, at least that's something. At least that's some kind of ambition, like a chase after a spark that you kind of lost over the years. Like at least
imagine
that
he
be
made
just
an
give us something.
A24 film.
Yeah,
Like, oh,
Oh my
could
God.
you
I'd watch
imagine
it.
the theater when it's like an A24 film from the mind of George Lucas? The kids would
Wow.
go
Oh,
wild.
I'd go
Uh,
wild. Yeah,
uh,
line up to see it.
exactly.
I'd watch it.
Yeah, I guess my only issue is that this feels like a movie that got better as it went along because at first it did kind of feel like, yeah, this is fine and just silly and fun with the first two stories. I think the last two stories really drive it home, and the first two stories are like, yeah, this is alright, but it's not really connecting with me yet. Like, the film kind of felt like it dragged up until like the last 45 minutes to an hour, but it really did like nail the running for sure, and the ending is like a great. Some people say like it's too abrupt, but I think that fits perfectly, and it
Well,
really
for the slow
captures like
burn.
melancholic tone. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's a slow burn with a really intense, like heartbreaking payoff, and I'm really glad it went there. Like I was kind of afraid it wouldn't. I was kind of afraid it would just be like, oh, I just want to capture this moment forever, and just like cut to a happy ending, Breakfast Club style, but it hammers home. It's like, no, these moments don't last forever. They need to be something to be treasured and valued. Instead of just a generic like, yeah, happy ending. The past was great. Go home, folks.
I totally agree, man. Fucking like I love the way like the boldness of this ending because it's not that abrupt. Like it's actually very slow. The build up. Like
You
I
kind
mean,
of know it's
from
coming,
him
yeah.
saying go to the crash, it's pretty abrupt. But like that's racing. It's kind of accurate in that
Oh,
regard.
also, like it
And
makes
let's
it
be real.
more heartbreaking.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and we all know he perfected the race in Phantom Menace. The pod, regardless of what you think of that, the pod racing
Now
scene in that
this is
is some
pod
of the
racing.
best. Exactly. Um. Uh. Shit. There was something I was just about to say. Oh, the final
Curse.
thing.
Yeah.
So for me and my dad, one of the the coolest points of conversation was, and now I know if you have been digging in the trivia, you probably know the answer to this, Devin. But regardless, what do you think, Ian? Like, what was the blonde real? Was that all happening, or was it all in his head?
I think the blonde was real. I think what it
See,
was saying that is like, these great moments will come and pass, but you shouldn't stop chasing after it anyways. I think that's kind of like the message they were trying to drive home with this side of the story. I think she was real. I think
well,
she
I
was
thought the
real, but
same,
I
and she's like
figured,
dangling
yeah,
him to stay, right? Like she's the bait that fate gives him to stay in the city. It's like, come on, you want to find her, don't you? I'm giving you everything you always wanted the day before you leave. So I thought the same thing. My dad disagreed. He had a point that when you see her from the plane, it looks like he was napping, and when he answers the phone, he's also asleep. He's also like he conceded that she's probably real in the first scene, but like the following like magical meetup stuff, he asserted that he fully believed that that was not real. And Devin, what do you think? Now I'll let you answer the question because there is an
go ahead.
answer.
It was all a dream.
Is that your
Yes,
final
indeed.
answer?
No, that's George Lucas's answer.
Wow.
Yeah, it's in the trivia.
I
Do you
hate
want
that
to?
stuff.
I,
Yeah.
I, I, I didn't even read that far. I was just
Oh, you
guessing
didn't?
based on.
Oh, I'm so
No,
sorry. I thought.
no,
Shoot.
no. I was just reading how Harrison Ford originally turned down the role because he was only getting paid $485, and that wasn't enough. That wasn't like his carpenter job was paying more than that, so they upped it to 500. Then he said, "Okay."
What a cheap son of a bitch. Okay, so sorry. I guess I'll take this then. Sorry, I was queuing you up and you didn't even. So basically, the movie was supposed to open. So instead of the credits over top of the picture of Mel's, it was supposed to open with that blonde at a drive-in alone in her T-Bird, and as she drove away, the car disappeared to let you know that she wasn't real. And that was
Wow.
his intention from page 1 of the script. So that's why, with it removed, it becomes a little ambiguous. But apparently, it was budgetary reasons. They didn't have the film to double expose and get it perfect. They were that
That's
cheap.
wild.
I think that's my
That would have
assumption.
taken away
Budgetary
from the
reasons for a
movie.
shot like
Yeah.
that. That's all I could assume.
It was like a fun little gimmick to make that story more interesting, and yeah, taking away from that, like, like really kind of does a disservice, and it kind of shows you like sometimes directors don't know what they're talking about. Like sometimes you
Dude,
kind of gotta convince the director to go down a certain path, and I think some of the best directors realize this.
George Lucas specifically has made some very poor choices that he's been talked out of.
Jar Jar
So
is
for
the
the
key.
better.
Jar Jar
Well,
is the
yeah.
Sith Lord.
That was a little bit too late to it. But regardless, just to top off that little story, when I did call my dad, and like it was like a week later, I was looking through IMDb, saw that trivia, called him up, and when I did tell him that he was right, he like lost it. He was so happy, and he was like, "I'm gonna hang up. I'm gonna call my I forget if it was his brother or sister, and he was like, and I'm gonna tell her I was right this whole time." So it was as much as like it does suck to have that happen for somebody who saw the movie like so young, has talked about it for years before the internet to get that confirmation. I think that sometimes putting it out there is important as much as you want to leave things completely ambiguous. That's my lesson from it
No,
all.
it's nice to get that vindication of oh, I've had this theory this whole time, or I've had this feeling about something, and no one believed me, and then it turned out to be true. That's awesome.
Right. But yeah, sorry, that's pretty much all I've got from American Graffiti. I don't know about y'all.
Nice, man.
Yeah, no, that sums up my feelings exactly. Let's rate it. What would you guys give American Graffiti out of 10?
I think it's great.
Great, mate.
Great out of 10.
I'm struggling. I'm fine between a 7.5 and 8. You know what? I'll give it a somewhat reluctant 8 out of 10. It's like a kid's drawing. It's rough around the edges. There's probably a few too many of them, but it's just full of hurt to the point where you can't be mad at it. And by the time it's all over, you relish the experience you just went through. So, 8 out of 10. It was a pleasant surprise. Didn't really know what to think of this one going in. Thanks, Dad. And thanks, Darryl's dad.
Right. Perfect dad film in that regard.
Ultimate Dad Kino.
Right.
Steven,
But
thanks
yeah.
for popping in.
Oh, there's a Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah.
just
No.
rated American Graffiti.
Well, I unfortunately I didn't have time to get these films done this week. To get them watched. I have been kind of in a crunch, but obviously I just wanted to pop in and pay my respects. I never had the fortune of meeting your father, Darryl, but it's got to be pretty special to raise a guy like you. And I'm glad to have known you as a friend. So my apologies that I couldn't be here in more capacity this week, but man, yeah, I just 99 episodes of the podcast. It just, I don't know. It's weird. It's special, you know?
Yeah, man.
Freaking wild, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
wild.
But yeah, thank you for saying that, man. It's it means a
Absolutely.
lot. Definitely check out the films if you ever get a chance.
I
Bridge,
will
maybe.
definitely.
Like we all night we've been saying how we get Tarantino vibes off these first two movies. So at the very
Wow.
least, yeah, no,
Very heavy Once Upon a Time in Hollywood vibes from American Graffiti
No.
in particular.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I've had a friend of mine recommend American Graffiti once before, and I actually saw that Paul Thomas Anderson really drew a lot of inspiration from American
yeah.
Graffiti for Licorice Pizza.
That's not too surprising.
So
I 100% see that. I 100% see
Yeah.
that.
even down to like the opening sequence with the guys in the bathroom and that whole bit. So
Oh, I was just thinking that, like the whole cherry bomb thing. Like, where did I see this recently? This exact shit
right,
happened.
right, yeah.
Wow.
No, but like I said, just wanted to pop in for those listening live. I'm Stephen Beeson, independent filmmaker and friend of the show. Um, Man, I will be back next week, but again, just wanted to kind of pop in, pay my respects, and I think I might watch American Graffiti tonight.
Do it.
Do it.
Absolutely.
Do it.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I will see you next week for the 100th episode.
Thank you, Steven.
Absolutely. Good night, everybody.
Popping in.
Take her easy, man.
Yeah. And what about you, Darryl? Why don't you give American Graffiti out of 10?
I mean, always with the asterisk, super biased on this one, but it's a 9.5 for me. If it didn't have the really, really bad shot sequences that are kind of peppered throughout, where you're like, oh, that was shot before Haskell, it'd probably be a 10. But yeah, gotta hold it back a little bit. So,
Hey,
9.5.
you bumped that out to a 9.6 right now.
9.6 it is.
Yay!
I was just about to say.
Now,
Perfect.
it's speaking of great music. Let's go to La 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 Bamba. La La La
La
Bamba.
Bamba.
I am doing
I
this
guess
wrong.
I'm taking up this
Well, sorry,
You know-
scars me, man. Over and
Well,
over and over and over.
So
All right, Devin, go.
I surprisingly had never seen or heard of this film, which is crazy. Like I might have heard about it in passing as like a music film, which you think I'd be all over. Like I love these kind of music biopics. Well, most of them anyway. Uh, when they get really inaccurate, it pisses me off, which we'll get into soon. Don't worry.
God damn it.
Not in this case, but next week. Foreshadowing. Anyway, La Bamba is the biographical story of the rise from nowhere of early rock and roll singer Richie Valens, who died at the age of 17 in a plane crash with Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper, which was the day the music died, as told to us by American Pie that one day at band camp. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent already. But no, it's crazy. I never heard of this film. When I hear the title of Bamba, I think of that one little skit of The Simpsons where they were forced to play the song in this bar to pay for their bill or something. I forget. But no, I was actually really surprised and delighted by this film. I never heard of the director, Louis Valdez. I haven't seen any of his stuff before, but I thought he did a pretty decent job with this. I think this is one major film that he did. Like I see 9 credits total for this guy, which is crazy. But anyway, it's a story of Richie Valens who kind of lives in this small commune, and he lives with his brother, and he has these aspirations to play music. He joins this band using an amplifier that he picked out of the garbage, and this like Dan Electro looking kind of guitar, and he has a very kind of sudden rise to fame as he gets around and plays this hot swinging rock and roll music that's brand new at the time. And I really love seeing like this music depicted in this time period when it was the hot shit that everyone was into. Because when I see like people play it these days, it feels there's a difference between like classic rock and roll that the young people are into versus boomer blues, like that you hear played in all the music stores these days by people who are definitely like over the hill trying to reclaim their youth from the time period. Don't worry, it'll happen to us soon when we there'll be old guys hunched over trying to rap over trap beats uh, in the next 30 or 40 years. Oh man. But no, I was really surprised by this film. I quite liked it. Um, Man, I don't even know where to begin with it. Honestly, I just feel like I'm rambling. I'm just
Oh,
surprised I
you're
never heard of
rambling,
this
man.
Um, I am rambling. I'm a rambling man. They call me the working man.
I was wondering if you picked that up. First, before we get into it, Devin, we're going to put this to the test. How accurate was the instrument playing and singing in this movie?
Mostly pretty accurate. I mean, they framed a lot of it so that you couldn't quite tell, quite conveniently. There were some times where the drummer was, like when I'm thinking about that first band practice scene, like I could tell he's actually playing like the chords, like the take of him singing is not exactly the one that you hear, but that's pretty,
Pretty common.
uh, Yeah, that's pretty run of the mill for movies like this. Like they always replace the sound afterwards, but the singing and playing was rather accurate. It was a lot more obvious with the drummer, where the first song that he's jamming, I forget the name of it. It's pretty much all on the snare, like from what I'm hearing, but you hear him kind of riding on the ride when you don't hear it. So, but I think that's like a visual thing, really, or maybe they're just kind of matching
Then
the
they
wrong
found it look
footage.
cool or something.
Oh yeah, well it's because your hand is over tapping on this big symbol, and that's more visually interesting than both hands being on the snare, I guess. Um, but those are just some filmmaking things.
More than
Um,
the visual accuracy, did you enjoy the flow of guitars? Because I know like almost every next scene, like because there's so many jumps in time, there's like an array of Fenders throughout the ages.
yeah, like different fenders, and I love these. I love the semi-hollow body that he, has at one point that you see on the cover of the poster. This big semi-hollow. Those are really popular then. That was kind of the bridge between like the old school acoustic jazz guitars and then the modern electric guitar. It's a way to kind of bring some of that acoustic resonance a little back into the electronic sound. I mean, it's not exactly a perfect effect. It's actually kind of a it's sort of a placebo effect that actually works, but it does kind of change the tone a little bit, or at least how the guitar responds as you play. But yeah, I'm kind of at a loss for words about it. I just really enjoyed this one.
It's not
Yeah, I
wrong.
mean, as a first watch, that's the thing. Like, I don't know if I'd expect that much from this because I mean, hell, we've covered Dewey Cox before, and I feel like there's an element of Dewey Cox that takes from both the Buddy Holly story and this. Like, people tend to see them as two sides of the same coin. Ha, brought it back, Ian. And oh, it's
Hey.
such a horrible joke. But yeah, so I don't know. To me, I just like that this is the more accurate version of accounts. I feel like a lot of the
Yeah,
time they want to say like the bus broke down and all this, and it was actually just the heater, and it was more so Buddy Holly wanted to go home and wash his clothes and get some good night's sleep. Like he just was kind. I don't want to say being lazy, but like it's the middle of a horribly planned tour, and it just kind of all came to a head. But like, whereas with this one, instead of having somebody like twice the age of the character they're trying to portray, it's a little bit closer. Lou Diamond Phillips was a fairly fresh face. And I think the director of this just really cared. He spent a lot of time with the family, learning a lot about them. There's a lot of family members have cameos in like the large family scenes. It's a very like true to him story. It's not, you know, it's there's nothing really gritty about it, but we're also talking about a 17-year-old that was just
yeah.
barely breaking into the cusp of anything, right? So
It blows my mind that he managed all this in a very short period of time,
Yeah.
and he was only 17. Like I'm looking at a picture of the real man, and he looks like he's in his 30s to me. Maybe that was just like I don't know what it is when I look at like old photographs. Like, have you ever looked at like your parents' yearbooks and you see like them in like either early high school or like public school, and like, why do these people look old
all
already?
of them, yeah.
Like, no, there was a whole Vsauce video kind of breaking this down, and I think there's like I don't know, it's like a half placebo effect plus some real stuff. Like, it's not necessarily that life was harder back then, so they aged quicker. Um, but also like your perception of growing up changes as you grow up, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so it's kind of that kind of thing. Um, but no, it's just wild. Like I'm looking at a picture of him. He doesn't look 17 to me. I mean, it's tragic that he died as young as he did, but um, I thought the actor that played him did a terrific job. I don't recall seeing him in anything else other than this.
What,
Lou
Lou
Diamond
Diamond
Phillips.
Phillips? You haven't seen, man, he's been in a lot of stuff. Like
I
he
imagine he has. Like I'm gonna look up something of his, and it's probably gonna hit me that I've seen him in something else before.
He's the kind
um
of actor that's been in tons of movies, but you never really know his name. It's just like,
yeah,
oh yeah,
Fair
he
enough.
was that guy from this. I
I'd
recognize
recognize
that guy. Yeah.
older version of him.
Yeah.
Courage Under Fire. I've heard of that one before.
Yeah, he's been in tons of
Stand and
stuff. Lots
Deliver.
of
I've
TV
heard of
shows.
that one.
Yeah.
Never heard of the Big Hit.
I think it
I
was
guess it
on
wasn't a big
CSI
hit.
a couple times.
Yeah, yeah, there was one of those shows where he was
Okay, that makes sense.
yeah.
Lots of TV movies I see. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess that's it. Yeah, probably a lot more TV stuff I saw him in.
fair
But
enough.
like I dig that they don't shy away from like portraying the brother as not in the best light, but then just as the brother is kind of getting a hold of his life, it's getting overshadowed by the ultra success of his younger brother. But he's
Oh
never
yeah.
like he shows the the jealousy, but like he's never like outright towards him. He still supports him, he's still there for him in like
There's a
many
strong like
ways.
humanity there, right?
Yeah,
Like even though he messes up, like the reaction to his then wife girlfriend, I forget exactly what they were,
Rosie.
being yeah, like his reaction to her being pregnant was, "It is my first and won't be my last." Like
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
one of the rawest lines of the movie, man. Oh,
Yeah, but then I mean it's played very very realistically. Like he was trying to subdue like an emotional reaction a little bit, and then later on he feels like regret that he's like separate from his kids and he comes over drunk trying to see them again, and that's a pretty raw scene.
yeah, all
And
things you think you would have shied away from in normal. But like, I get it's his brother and not him, but still, you like. I feel like the level. I don't want to use realistic. We've been saying that all night, but like, I feel like there is this kind of like more grounded factor with this film than like most biopics that just want to polish everything.
oh yeah,
Um,
especially at this like time, like the '80s, like you were starting to see some better stuff then, but I still feel like there was a lot of shoe polish put into these movies. Um, Although that seemed to have come back in resurgence as of late.
right?
I don't want to spoil my thoughts yet for next week, but
You just
Bohemian
keep
Rhapsody
alluding to
edit.
it. Hey,
Yeah,
you spoiled it.
whoops.
Yeah. Uh, I blame Walk Hard for ruining this movie for me.
Yeah.
I
Well,
blame
Walk Hard
it's
ruined
all
all
Walk
biopic
Hard,
movies.
but it ruined this one hard. Like sorry, I couldn't. I had a hard time taking this
Oh
story
man,
seriously.
the,
Now it kind of reminds me of Midnight Express, where it's like it's very well shot. It's loaded with great music. The performances are really solid. It's a very tasteful depiction of its characters, unlike Bohemian Rhapsody. But I just found the story like very by the numbers and cheesy, and like I really couldn't get into it from like a storytelling level at all. Like I enjoyed the presentation of and the tastefulness of it, but I don't know. I just unfortunately couldn't really connect with this one beyond that. It's very fine. Like it's a fine, nice looking biopic that I feel like I've seen a million times. And maybe that's accurate to his story, and maybe it's similar to a lot of musicians' story, but it didn't really do a lot to deviate from that norm, unfortunately. I feel like an artist like this kind of deserves a little bit better, in my opinion. I don't know, it's just very meh for me. It's very well made, kind of fluff. I blame Mark Hard for me not liking it.
That's fair. I will say they're working with far less source material than any other biopic out there
it's just
by
true. I
far.
That's
mean, the
also
guy was
true.
only 17,
That is
right?
also
Yeah,
true.
so
It's hard to create a portrait of a man's
So they
life
may
when
have
they've
had to
only
like
lived.
resort to like a lot of the kind of tropes to make his stories more interesting.
I mean, some of it's real too, though, right? Like, if
That's
you
true.
were to tell me that the whole like visions of like the whole a plane crash at his school when he was young thing was just made up, I'd believe you. But that's fully what happened. His like he had a friend who died
Oh, and I
at his
believe it.
school. He was at
Yeah.
I
his,
mean,
and it's just like things like that. And then like the first time he ever flies, it's like I don't know. You're right. It's definitely by the numbers, but I think this one adds enough sauce, and like the ending is so tragic. Like I every time he screams Richie, like I cry. And Santo and Johnny,
oh
like
yeah.
this is what made Santo and Johnny the sad death song. Like ugh.
Alexa, play.
Yeah, yeah, no, straight up. Oh my
I
god.
I
Oh
feel
man, I
bad.
mean,
Yeah.
even though the opening shot of this film where it just shows these kids kind of playing, basketball in slow motion and everything's overexposed, um, and then these planes crash, you have that just sudden violent kind of break into it. I mean, it caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting it, and I really liked how they introduced us into that. Um, set of sequences I liked is when he goes to record himself for the first time, and he has what's his name from The Matrix, or what's his name also from Memento,
Oh, John
His
Lenny.
name.
Oh no. Yeah, John Pantoliano.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lenny
Yeah.
is like I hate when people call me that. Did I tell you that? Only every time I see it.
But no, I like how he has those like 8 curtains for sound insulation on the walls that do jack shit.
Yeah. And he's like,
It's
why is
supposed
this? Why is this happening? It's supposed to sound like this. That sounds like
it's supposed
this.
to like break up but also absorb
Yeah.
the sound a little bit in the room, but it really 8 curtains do fuck all for
John
sound insulation.
Pantaleano always plays
But
the same character, but I wouldn't want it any other way.
but also that's a very realistic thing. Like people who are just starting out with like studios will just get 8 curtains, and I don't know if they'd even bother painting them to look more professional, but they will just bring that up and use that as sound insulation
Dude,
when they
all the
don't really know what
time.
they're doing.
In the
Oh
50s,
yeah.
they recorded in bathrooms a lot because it would give you natural reverb.
And they
Just
didn't
go
really have
yeah.
a lot
install.
of money to work with. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
who needs a reverb chamber on an amplifier when you have a bathroom, right?
Straight up.
Yeah.
And there's no adding effects in post. It's just straight to tape, and that's the take.
Yeah,
And
you
that's why
gotta
you had
use
to
what
do
you got.
60.
Yeah.
That's why you had to. That's why he had to record 60 takes, which seems today seems like super excessive. Like I wouldn't even think to do that many takes, but back then they had to get it completely perfect, and then they would even try to splice tape and edit certain takes together. Like they might, if the first half of this take was stronger than another one, but they want to use the end, they want to use the ending of this other take, then they'll splice them together like that. They'll just take like a moment of a break of silence in between or some other part that's they can easily splice in, and they'll use that. But no,
Man.
it's just crazy seeing those like early recording like processes. Um, I wouldn't say that this is like the best portrayal of like a studio environment that I've seen, but it worked totally fine for the story. It was totally serviceable. There wasn't anything that was completely out of whack for me
Well, I'd say
watching
it
it.
gets that repetition better than anything else I've seen, though. The way they just like
Oh, definitely.
over and over again that well. It's like
It's a,
burned into my fucking head.
it does it a lot better than Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh
I'm
God.
not bearing the lead on that one whatsoever, but we're talking about.
Yeah, but just
Yeah, so
Uh,
I didn't realize I was
yeah.
teeing it up for you in that regard.
No, by the way, we'll
No,
get into it.
it
Yeah.
actually ended up where it was kind of the make or break moment. Am I going to talk about Event Horizon or Bohemian Rhapsody? And now that we're watching like a
We
Bamba, it's like, okay, no.
Okay, I have to get this out of the way right now. Devin, I hate you. We could have talked about a sci-fi cult classic that inspired the likes of Dead Space and tons of other sci-fi movies and video games, and you chose Bohemian fucking Rhapsody. I hate you. I hate you.
Evil.
Fucking
Well,
hate
you know what? We could split the diff. We'll get into it. We're already jumping into next week.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
sorry.
But,
Back to La Bamba.
Well, hey, but
yeah.
we kind of already said it. Like, there's some cool little flourishes, but this is very much the of the time thing that Walk Hard. So it's hard to watch it after reviewing Walk Hard not
I
that long ago
know,
too,
that's
because
just
like
it.
it's parodying exact sequences from this, like
So
down
on
to
par.
like the way he scouted, the way it all. I don't know, just it feels so perfectly parodied that it's rough to go
Like the
back to the
scene when
original.
he's like recording like his first official album was so similar to Walk Hard, where he was recording his first official album. It's like, I want to try something. It's like, all right, you got 15 seconds. He, like, makes a masterpiece. I'm like, that's basically what happens in this movie.
Right?
I'm sorry. Like, I'm sure that actually happened. I'm sure they were being accurate to the story, but I don't know. It came across as cheesy and kind of one note, and yeah, and maybe they didn't have a lot to work with, but I'm still kind of disappointed by the end of it. Like, I didn't feel as much from this movie as I wanted to, but on the technical level, it's great. It's very well shot. Lou Diamond Phillips is incredible as this character, and a lot of the characters are like kind of the typical tropes, but I mean, they do a good job of pulling off those tropes. Like, I want Joe Pantoliano to be an agent in everything from now on. Like, he's perfect as that kind of character. Even if he is playing himself is perfect for that kind of character, so it just kind of fits.
oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure he
It- it-
plays
it-
that character in a well, not the same, but like you're saying. I think there's another biopic he does the exact
What?
same thing.
Oh, I gotta watch it now. I'm
oh yeah.
gonna
But
add that to my watch list.
it was so interesting how it shows that he's coming up with his like new stage name, and he just tells him this is your new stage name. Like there's no discussion about it. It's just that's it.
I
That's your
saw
name
my
now.
name in bright light letters saying Dirk Diggler. For some reason, that's all I can think of.
Well, but that's a name he gave himself. Where
Oh,
in this case
this
it
is the
was
opposite. Yeah, he kind of gave him
this
a
is the
name. And he's
opposite.
like,
Where
all right.
he's telling him his name,
Uh,
and he's
I mean,
which
he
is
was pretty young.
100% like
Yeah.
an industry thing that they did at the time, is that if you had a name that was a little too un-American, they would like shorten it or create something. And unfortunately, it's Richie Valens is a much catchier name than his actual name, which is what was it, Valentina or Venezuela? That was pretty was Venezuela, I'm pretty sure.
So
Venezuela, yes, it
yeah,
is
that's it.
Yeah,
Venezuela.
that was it.
Just had to
What was I gonna
confirm.
say? Crap. Yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say. Sorry, I watched this film yesterday, so it's still kind of fresh in my memory. I had to watch both this and La Bamba yesterday because I got a little bit swamped at work with other things, and yeah, like it's fine. Maybe I need to watch it again to let it really sit with me, but it's fine. I need to not see Walk Hard for a while and get that movie out of my memory, and then watch this again and
I think
take it a
it's
little
just
more seriously.
I think it's just the best of what was a very like cookie cutter mold kind of genre. Like I didn't want to
Yeah, they did
necessarily
the
show you
best with what
guys
they
the
had.
Buddy
I'll
Holly
give it that.
story
Yeah.
because it's like so more like padded down and it was Eddie and the Cruisers where he plays the band manager, Joe Pantoliano.
Right,
All right.
right.
Wish
Um
listing that movie now as we speak.
But it just blows my mind that I didn't know anything about this film, and I was gonna say it seems pretty overlooked or underrated, but looking at IMDb, it's got 80 something percent on Rotten Tomatoes certified fresh. So people do recognize that this is a well-made film. It just seems very sincere, short and sweet, just under 2 hours, and I think it perfectly encapsulates the this guy's story and his life and what it meant to his family and his fans growing up. Like it's very much like lightning in a bottle, like what he was doing with music at the time. I mean, it seems kind of like cliche these days, but it was adding this fresh kind of voice and this sound, like the fact that he was going to sing rock and roll in Spanish. Um, like no one thought to do that, I guess, because it was an all-American genre. Um, but he just did it, and it became a pretty well-known song and a bit of a hit. And I like that it expanded the cultural background of what you see in the genre. It's one of those things that he, because of his putting his mind to it, just wanting to go out there and play music. He injected kind of his cultural heritage into the music just by being who he is, and I think that's admirable. And we have a whole eclectic mix of voices in that music now, which is great. And I
well,
think it's great to see that.
yeah, totally, man. It's like the ripples that resonated after too, right? I feel like this movie, the only thing it doesn't really do it justice to is like how much it affected society. I feel like no movie
Mhm.
about the day that music died, like they should all have an epilogue where like the movie ends, but then you get a montage of like the next 40 years and every pop culture reference and every single, you know, effect that
Yeah,
it had on everything, like because I guess now we're starting to get so far removed it's not as important, but for decades it was a very talked about event.
oh yeah, definitely. And I think yeah, I mean those kind of montages can be pretty cheesy, but it can also help kind of contextualize the person's story and their legacy a little bit, right? When you have the montage of everything that's happened afterwards, it can be done very tastefully. That's what I'm saying.
I think that's what, to me, that's the only thing that this could really need. Like you could cut some other parts of the movie if you did the perfect finale of an ending of just
Oh
like
yeah,
maybe more artsy, maybe more jolted cutted, and just kind of build an idea of the resonance, because to me that is an important aspect of it all.
for sure. Like I think this film maybe gets a little overlooked these days. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it, but I think it's really well made for what it is, and it perfectly suits exactly what it's going for. Um, and yeah, it's crazy. I haven't seen this director work on anything else, but I think this was like his passion project that he put everything into. Um, and he did a really good job with it. Oh, he's still alive. He's 82 now.
Ooh,
Crazy.
Damn.
damn.
Luis Miguel Valdez.
What would you guys rate out of 10?
I'm gonna give it a solid 8. I thought it was really well done, and I
Nice.
really enjoyed the music and the backstory. Really felt for his character. I mean, I remember Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper, but I always forgot uh, Richie Valentine, unfortunately, as part of that group. Um, so when I think about that song, I'll be thinking more about him now.
There you go, man. I'm gonna go an 8.5 for it. It's like I said, there's nothing like insanely special that takes us to the next level, but it also doesn't do much stuff wrong.
Fair
So,
enough.
like Devin was saying, there's a little bit of inaccuracies with playing here and there, and obviously there's gonna be a little bit of roughness when it's lip sync, but other than that, I think it does exactly what it sets out to do. So I'm going eight and a
I
half. Oh,
I'm gonna quote another Futurama quote. Um, when you've done everything right, people won't be sure you've done anything at all.
Yeah,
bingo.
damn. Giving this one 6 out of 10. I enjoyed it. It was fine, but
I can't persuade you to
didn't.
bring that up to a 6.9.
Unfortunately, not. I've given my 6.9 for the evening.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I am spent. And
Dang.
I just want to give one last shout out to the late, great, wonderful Stephen J. Ailes. I was hoping I'd make you so mad for not liking the first and last movie so much that you'd come out of the grave and kick my ass, but we appreciate you wherever you are, man. Raise a glass, raise a tankard, Prost, cheers,
Raise a nail for Ailes.
Yep.
raise a nail for Ailes. Next week is our 100th episode special, and to celebrate, I had this crazy idea where, let's put our money where our mouths are. There's always been talk about fan theories and fan rewrites, and what if this movie was structured differently, or what if this story was like this and stuff like that. Well, I decided the three of us, including Stephen Beeson, Devon King, and myself, would each tackle a film that we would either want to rewrite, restructure, or reformat to become that could have been something special. What could have been, should have been. That's going to be the episode title. Episode 100, what could have been, should have been. My choice is Disney's Hercules, which may come across as controversial to some people, but I'm incredibly passionate about Greek mythology, and I'm really disappointed with how the movie turned out on a story level. And I have some ideas of how it could have maybe worked better without necessarily going like too dark or too beyond like the Disney format even. So
Okay, step one, you make Hera the bad guy and not Hades, right? Right?
not Hera the bad guy. Have
Well,
Hades
isn't
be the
that
bad guy, but have Hera. I have an
Hera,
idea how it
Hera's
works in
the
the story.
real bad guy of the
She
myth? I'm
is
just
the real
saying,
bad guy of the myth. She
if we're
is
going legit.
in my version. She's kind of the bad guy, but I'm gonna get into that
Boo.
on the
I'm
100th
already
episode.
doing.
No, don't.
Also,
Hear
does
me out.
Steven have one yet? Because
Oh,
I
his
definitely
Oh
choice.
mentioned
yeah.
that.
Oh yeah,
Aw,
his
damn it.
choice.
Okay.
Because we gotta include the 2009 writers' strike. 2009's Law-Abiding Citizen, starring Gerard Butler and Jamie Foxx. Apparently, that story goes completely off the rails for no reason, and I can't wait to watch it. Devon King, instead of picking Event Horizon, which could have been a cool movie, chose Bohemian Rhapsody, and I hate it. I hate it.
I mean, I'm equally persuaded to do both, but my my rewrite, my take of Event Horizon may not be um suitable for human consumption yet.
Yeah, fair. It's
I,
it's not ready. It's
I,
undercooked.
I'm gonna keep that one on the back burner for now.
Eh,
I might give a little taste of it at the end after I've done my Bohemian Rhapsody rant.
Yeah, fair enough.
And
Let's
if anybody bails, I still have my Hot Tub Time Machine 3 one that I had prepped for you.
Ooh.
But yeah.
well,
Have
these
Well,
are
fun.
we'd
movies
love
that
well
yeah, go on.
we'd love to have you on. I mean, there isn't a Hot Tub Time Machine 3, is there?
No,
there's
originally number 2 was supposed to be named number 3 as a joke about time travel. So I wanted to make the actual sequel. Not,
Oh,
Hey, you
yeah.
know what? You
Yeah.
know what, Daryl? You are more than welcome to pop in and just pitch us that as an aside.
please
I can
do.
like
More than
pipe it
welcome.
out so I just blow through it in like 2.5 minutes, so it's not like
No, longer than that.
rambly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
I'll do something like
I
that.
feel like we're gonna be all over the place. We're probably gonna mention other films and then just give little like quick ideas about how we might change one thing in those things. But we're gonna really dig into the meat on the main three that we have. But I'm pretty sure we're gonna have all kinds of asides and non sequiturs as we usually do as these discussions go. These discussions are always so chaotic and unplanned, but that's kind of the beauty of it, and that's why I love putting it all out there unedited. I like to call that gonzo podcasting, which also saves us a lot of pain in editing it down. But that's just sort of the beautiful
Gone
chaotic
on the
nature.
great
You get into a
gonzo.
conversation, you bring up something, and it reminds you of something completely different. but it adds something to the
Did you
discussion
just
regardless.
reference Wet Hot American Summer First Day at Camp? Real hot gonzo stuff, darling.
Haven't seen.
Ian?
I did
I have
not.
not
I was
seen it.
referencing
Yeah.
I was referencing fucking what's his name?
No,
From Fear
Ian.
and Loathing.
No, I know.
Oh no, I was referencing the Muppets. I have not seen Wet Hot
Oh.
American Summer.
No,
I've
this
not seen it
straight
yet.
up. It sounded like an exact line, and I was about to say it myself.
No,
was like, what?
I was just referencing
Mind-
the Great Gonzo from the
Oh.
Muppets.
Hunter
bad.
S. Thompson. That's what I was thinking.
Oh yeah.
God damn lizards! Out to get us. We need to talk about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas on this channel at
You
some point.
haven't?
We haven't.
Jeez.
No, it's on the list.
We haven't talked about Apocalypse Now even, which I feel
Oh,
obligated
what a
to do since
bad
you mentioned
movie.
Uh,
Ugh.
I will
Ooh,
fight
fun.
you. I will bring you on this podcast and fight you. I will go over to your house. I live like 10 minutes away from you. I will go over to your house and fight you.
Ian,
And
I'm
I will
happy you
lose.
enjoy it.
And I will lose. I will lose, but as long as I throw one punch, I'll be good. I'm kidding, of course. Thank you, Jamar, for subbing in on the podcast. You're great. Best of luck to you both. Baby underway. Look forward to that next time on the podcast. We're gonna record the birth
enjoy
live.
sleeping while you can.
Hey, come on now. You can't scare me yet. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, is it first day yet? Have a great night. Stay tuned for Conan. And rest in peace to Stephen J. Ayles. Have a great night, everybody.